And we are back here on Metal Nation Radio. I am Rustin Rose of Metalholic Magazine, and you just heard brand new Goatwhore there. And with us tonight, Ben Falgoust, the Raging Voice. How are you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I'm honored to have you on the show, get a chance to talk with you. The new album, Constricting Rage of the Merciless, coming out on July 8th. Real excited about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It should be some good times, man.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about the new album. Obviously, that's what we're here for. Before we get to the new album, you guys just finished up Metal Alliance with Behemoth. Seems like a great tour to get back on the road with. How'd that go?
Well, that was amazing, man. It was an amazing tour. It's just all the bands that were involved and everything, and the way everything was laid out with that package. From day one, man, when we started, usually you come into a tour, and for the first few days it's kind of rough getting all the times together, everybody getting things sorted out. But, man, the first day was smooth, and it just set it up for the whole tour. And each band, even though we all have, like, a lot of similarities, you know, we had our little differences as well that kind of made up for, you know, the whole crowd and everything like that. And the people attending, you know, never split for any band. You know, they stayed through the whole time, were interested in everything. It was a really good package overall. That's
cool when they do that. It's nice when they show up early, they stay for the whole thing, show respect for all the bands, and get to know some of the new bands that they may not have known before.
Yeah, and all the bands put on hell of shows, man. Everybody equally fucking put in 100%. And I think it just made the tour that much more fucking crazy, you know?
Absolutely. Now, you guys have a little bit of time off, it seems, then some solo dates before Summer Slaughter with Morbid Angel and Dying Fetus.
Yeah, we're totally ready for that, man. We're getting everything sorted out. We added in a new song in the set during the Metal Alliance tour, but we're going to add in even more new songs since the album drops on July 8th. So we're going to kind of focus on putting in maybe 3, maybe 4 tracks from the new album, mix it in with some of the older material as well. Depending, you know, Summer Slaughter, your set times are short. I think we have something like 25 minutes or something like that, so we'll try to cram as much as we can in that amount of time.
Is it tough being on those big multi-band tours like that? I know they're really cool to be a part of, but I would think it's certainly a lot tougher than just, you know, 2 or 3 bands in a club tour.
I think the biggest difference is definitely that meaning that there's a lot more bands in the shorter amount of time you play, but also having to be there such at an earlier time, you know, and sometimes cities, you know, are distance apart, 8 hours apart, sometimes more than that, and you have to do the overnight drive, and then, you know, it's pretty brutal heat during the summer as well, and that takes a toll, especially, you know, if you're in a van with a trailer, and you're just kind of hanging out in the van, it's not running, and you're trying to kill time, and some venues just don't have space, you know, you got all the people that are coming into the show, and they got 10, 12 bands playing, you know, so you're trying to hang out outside, you bring a canopy set up, and you try to make the best of it overall, you know.
Right.
But, you know, it should be a really good experience. Just, like I said, the only really big difference is just being there early. You know how metalheads are. We don't want to get up fucking early. But we definitely have to be there early to get everything going, and, you know, everybody gets their gear in, gets everything sorted. I mean, there's a whole agenda throughout the day to keep everything in motion. So,
yeah.
You know, we have to get there early. Everybody has to get there early. So you just kind of grit it out for fucking a month and a half or whatever, and just roll with the punches, and then get ready for the winter touring right after that.
On to Constricting Rage of the Merciless. First off, is there any story behind the title this time around?
Not really any story. It just goes with everything else, though. You know, I never really delved too much into, like, concept ideas or anything. But I think, too, that on this record, though, there's a lot more, not necessarily concepts within the song titles and the songs, but a little bit more in-depth kind of approach to things. You know, I mean, there's like, with the song Nocturnal Conjuration of the Accursed, I wanted to kind of approach it more like the music kind of reminded me of like a Merciful Fate, King Diamond kind of essence. So I wanted to approach the lyrics in that way too, like King Diamond used to do, nightmares, things like that. And I actually based the song's lyrics off of a nightmare that I had, so it kind of fell into place really well. So there's just little instances of that throughout the record, of things mixed in with just the overall approach that we take with lyrics and music in general as Goatwhore.
Now, you guys opted to record on 2-inch tape this time around, going old school. Fantastic, but certainly more arduous choice. Is that something you guys have wanted to do for a while now?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always been in there. It's becoming way more of an obsolete form because of the lack of, like, I think there's like one company that still makes tape, but then the tape is questionable because they haven't like been able to match the formula that was used back in the day.
Right.
And so basically we got used reels that were older that, you do this process. It's funny because you bake them for like, we had 4 reels and you bake them in this little like jerky machine or something like that. And you like bake it for 4 hours, flip it for another 4 hours and pull it out. And for the whole time while you're getting the tape ready, you kind of got your fingers crossed because you could basically start tracking to it, and then shit's just not coming out right, and you have to change the whole agenda.
Right.
But everything worked great, man, and the tape was great. And apparently, the older tape, if it was taken care of and kept properly, you can tape over it pretty much a numerous amount of times. So it all kind of worked out, and we were really interested in doing it. And Rutan, he has this old tape machine from Moore Sound. It was used back in the day from, the classic records, the old Morbid Angel records, Suffocation, all those things in the heyday of what the whole death metal scene and what Moore Sound was doing back then. So, it does have some nostalgia to it as well. And we wanted to get that sound. Some people might not notice the difference, but we sure as hell notice. It's a more warm, full tone that you get out of it. And it's funny because you do it onto tape, and you basically take it from tape and you drop it into Pro Tools, and people are like, well, you send it back into digital. But I don't think in this day and age yet digital has mastered the knack to duplicate that tone you get off tape yet. It's went so advanced and everything, and it's went so far and changed the face of how things are recorded. I think it still has missed some elements that it still hasn't grabbed onto yet. So to be able to do that still and do it with Goatwhore was an awesome experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and anytime you can record a tape, it's definitely more organic. It gives it more warmth, like you said, if that's a word you can put in the same sentence with Goatwhore. But so
yeah, well, too, we've always been looking for a more, like, you want to be able to hear things in what we do, but we still want that grit as well. And
right.
And tape can give you that as well. It can give you that rawness, where sometimes digital cleans and polishes things up a little bit more, depending on the engineer, of course, and the band and things like that. But, we wanted to do it and see how it would come out for us, and hopefully, who knows, we might be able to do the next record on it, depending on, as the years pass, if the tapes are still good and if everything works out really well, and if Rutan's really interested in doing it again.
Now, you just got to keep that tape stocked up and ready to roll. So now,
yeah.
Blood for the Master, the last album, seemed a little more, caustic and aggressive to me, where Constricting Rage of the Merciless feels even darker than the usual. It's bordering on barely contained psychosis. You guys always seem to evolve a little with each album. How do you mark that evolution on this album, or how would you describe the new record from your perspective?
It's like, to me, with Goatwhore, it's always been just this natural progression. We never made we don't do any drastic changes or jumps in what we do. It's really very small and things like that. And I think it's more based on just our influences, our interests, and as we grow and mature as a band as well. As Sammy and Zach grow together and how they work out music and how James's element adds to that, and then how I step in and add over lyrics and everything like that. I think all of that is the growth and the whole advancing of the band in general. It's like, I like to look back at all the records, and I don't shun any of my past records. Some bands look back and they're like, oh, we were younger, that was stupid, it was, we don't really play anything from any of that anymore. But I look back and I'm like, I like to look at the growth of it. I like to see how I evolved as a vocalist, how Sammy evolved more as a guitarist, and things he'd come up with, how he approaches songwriting. And I like to see, ever since Zach's been into Haunt and Curse, how Sammy and Zach's relationship expanded and the way they work together and everything and build songs. So there's all those little elements, but even within a song, there's so many elements, as in like emotion-wise for each member, because it goes through a phase of going from Sammy, writing a riff and bringing it to the table, and then Zach stepping in and putting his element over it, and then James stepping in and filling it in with the bass, and then I'm stepping in. There's, with all those different points, you have different emotions and different influences that go along with it. You know, we have influences that are direct and indirect that go on. So that's all in the involvement in the process of writing the song, putting all the songs together for the whole album and the whole piece in general.
Right, and this is the second album with the same full lineup. Did that have any impact on this record?
Yeah, I definitely think it helps, because as you go along, you know, you have members that they're accustomed with each other. They know things, and also their influences start to bleed off on each other. It's just kind of like a subconscious thing. You really don't notice it, and it just kind of falls into place from being around each other and being associated with each other. So, you know, every time you have a new member come in, it's almost like, okay, we're trying to get used to how this guy works, or he's trying to get used to the way we're writing things or approaching things. Luckily enough, James was in a band with Sammy, his other band, Ritual Killer.
Right.
And so they had a relationship, and that kind of helped when he came into Goatwhore, that they had this little relationship and they would work together and write together in the other band. So, and the thing was cool was they came in and they still, even though they jammed and Ritual Killer together, they kind of didn't bring the element that Ritual Killer does fully into Goatwhore. Sammy still kept the whole Goatwhore experience there and bring James into that experience as well.
And speaking of sort of that continuity and rubbing off on each other and gelling and everything in that way, you guys once again obviously turned to Eric Rutan again to help record this record. What is it about that relationship that works so well for you guys?
I think it's funny I say this, because most of the time when you feel comfortable in something, that's when you need to get out of it.
Right.
But it's just a comfortable experience, and I think we all, you know, we always joke around about how Rutan's like the secret fifth member of Goatwhore. You know, I mean, he doesn't write any music, you know, or anything like that, but he contributes in a way that makes a difference for the band. You know, like when we record, we're putting everything down onto CD or whatever. You know, he's got a certain ear, and he fell in with this. You know, even though the style. You know, he comes from the camp of Morbid Angel, Hit Eternal, where it was a little bit more, you know, it was a little more polished, precise death metal, where with Goatwhore, we're a little bit more grittier, and we like to leave some of the mistake in there and show the human nature of things, you know, and he kind of adopted with us and fell into it, where there was points where he would be like, you know, he wouldn't be like a dead set engineer, just like, these are the rules and this is how we run by things. He would be like, okay, well, if you don't like it that way, how do you want to try it? And what do you want to try? So, yeah, let's try these things. Let's see what works and what doesn't work, so we know what we can do. And so he'd be open to that. And so that relationship was better. So each time we went back, each time for each record, you know, as a musician, you do a record and you're like, I like this, but, you know, you're nitpicky and there's certain things you like and you don't like. And you're like, next time I want to focus on this a little more. Right. And so when you go in, you bring up all these, so you write little notes, and each member's like, yeah, I want to focus better on this, or I want the drums to sound like this a little more, or I want the guitars to have this kind of attack in it a little more, or I want the vocals to be like this. Like, for an example is, he has a mic that we always use for vocals, and I was just interested to see what other mics would sound like. And he was funny. He was like, dude, I'm telling you, this mic is the best for your voice. It brings you out so much. He goes, but you know what? We're going to sit around for the next hour, and we're going to plug in all these different mics, and you're going to fucking do the vocals on them, and then we're going to track them, and then we're going to compare it, and so you can pick it out. So the point is he's real open like that to try something, even if it goes back to the same one you were using, or it goes to something new. He learns from it, we learn from it. It's all a mutual thing. It's all a growth process, and I think that makes it so much better when you go in there and everything is a comfortable experience, because recording is kind of uncomfortable in a way.
Right.
Because it's like a big magnifying glass. You get in there and you're like focusing in on your part, and it's like, holy shit, this doesn't sound like anything when we were doing it in the practice room like this. It sounds kind of different, you know, because it's so fucking noisy in the practice room, and you're like, yeah, it is what it sounds like, and then you hear everything really good in these headphones when you're in the studio, and you're like, holy shit, yeah, that sounds way different now. But the comfortable experience makes it like, all right, okay, this is cool. And Rican's like, just go through it, get in that mode, get the feeling. And he won't let you do a subpar performance. He will be on your ass. I know some people are like, oh yeah, he's like the general or anything. That's not a bad thing. He just wants to make sure you put out the best performance you can at that moment to have everything right there on the table, And it's not. We don't have to be precise because human element there is small mistakes there, but he definitely makes you fucking bust your ass, which is a good thing.
Absolutely, he brings out the best in you, and that's what it's all about. Now, we don't have time, obviously, to talk about all the tracks on the album, but I'd love to cover 2 or 3. My current favorite is Bearing Teeth for Revolt, which we just heard, and which really speaks to your more traditional metal side, I believe.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, that song is stemmed from, early classic metal like fucking Judas Priest, Accept, Little Motorhead, things like that. It's basically, in the Priest era, they basically took rock and roll and made it into metal. They formed it into that fashion, and that's... Bearing Teeth is totally that element. That's our roots of traditional classic metal right there.
Right. Now, do you guys get tired of people trying to jam you into that black and death metal label?
It is what it is. Everybody's going to label something, everybody's going to pinpoint things. I don't like to be fully painted into the black metal corner because we do have a lot of other aspects that we are involved in. Yes, when we first started, I think black metal was a higher influence in what we do. But I think as we progressed, our other influences started to come out even more. Our death metal influences, our thrash metal influences, even like some old, like crusty hardcore punk kind of influences, things like that. So, I mean, we've always been deep rooted in like, the traditional black metal, like Celtic Frost, Venom, Bathory, but we even grew up listening to things like Emperor and Dark Throne. But we've always went back to the more older traditional style of things. And I think that, sometimes when you pinpoint and stick a band in one genre within extreme metal, it pushes people away sometimes. Sometimes there's a death metal kid, he's solely into death metal. And then if you say, hey, I have this band I'm listening to, and he's like, well, what kind of style is it? And the person goes, oh, well, I kind of like black metal. And he's like, oh, no, I don't like black metal. I just like death metal. But the thing is that we do have death metal elements. So it's like, it puts us away sometimes. And sometimes it can be a little difficult to juggle us because people do separate themselves into all these subgenres sometimes in a social kind of standing. So, when people ask me, I just kind of say we're pretty much extreme metal. We kind of cover the bases across the board with everything.
Now, getting back to the songs, I sidetracked us. Cold Earth Consumed in Dying Flesh is pretty intense. What's the backstory on that one?
That was actually approached. We were probably actually 3/4 away, probably into the writing process. And I'd been heavily listening to some older death metal that I grew up on, like old Bolt Thrower, like War Master, Realm of Chaos. Also listening to newer bands that kind of do really well with that style, like Hail of Bullets, Ballanfire, things like that. And so I approached Sammy. I was like, hey, I think it'd be cool if we did something that had like, it started off and it extended out in a slow, really fucking leveling riff, like a bulldozer coming through. And then at one point, it does a shift, but it doesn't speed like a blast. It just gets more upbeat. And then that finishes out the song. And he was like, interesting. He goes, I'll see what I can kind of throw together. And he threw around some riffs, and we started throwing around ideas with it and following it up. And it just built. And like every song, too, we have like a working title when we're putting it together. And for that song, I think we had called it like Valley of Bone or something like that. And Sammy was saying like, once we started like getting the basic skeleton of the song together, he's like, it reminds me of like the aftermath of Armageddon. And I was like, that's unique. I'm going to build a title and lyrics based on that, based on the aftermath of like this quote unquote Armageddon.
Right.
And then that's basically how the whole song pretty much fell into place. And I really, vocally too, I attacked it in different ways. I started using more of a guttural voice for it because of the whole like older death metal kind of influence and thing like that. And I mean, back when I was younger, I was in a band. It was just an all death metal kind of Cookie Monster band. And I used to do it a lot. And I was like, wow, I really like to get back into this a little bit more. So, everything kind of fell into place with it. And the outcome was really great. As far as the drummer goes, it helps the drummer kind of chill out within a set because that whole first part runs on like 3 minutes or so, and it's fairly slow, and
Right.
you can get a little breather in there, and then you can just kick back in and take off after that.
And of course, the fun one, if I mispronounce it, forgive me, Schadenfreude. I know what it means, but I just thought it was great that you guys did that song. Why don't you share a little bit about that one with us?
Oh yeah, I mean that's another one. It's like the title came in before the lyrics, and then we just built the lyrics around that title. Kind of like in our own little way, our own little ideas laid out to it. In the representation, because the title can expand to anything, because it says it's like the pleasure to ride of one's fallings or failings or anything like that. I mean, it could be to the point of a kid standing on a corner of a street and there's a kid on a bike and he falls down and the kid laughs. That's a small example of it, all the way up to, something severely miserable. Of course, we took the more severely miserable approach as far as the lyrics go and everything like that,
right,
and kind of blended it more within, the kind of dark arts kind of theme within it as well.
Speaking of intense, pretty intense album artwork, some of my favorite that you guys have had. I'm assuming that was Jordan Barlow again?
Oh, yes, definitely Jordan Barlow. He's really great at, you can give him these ideas and everything you were thinking about, and it comes to you with, he'll show you, a pen sketch, like a pencil sketch of it first. And you're like, dude, it's dead on. It's dead on what we were talking about. Ever since we did the Blood for the Master layout with him, and then we went and did this record with him, it was just like we threw the ideas out there, and everything would just roll out. He's really good at just capturing all the things. I mean, I scribble some little stick figures and shit on a page because I'm not good like that, but I have a lot of ideas and everything. And he really likes it. He's always like, I like taking your ideas and putting them to actual visual aspects. And, so me and Sammy and him will sit down and we'll throw all these ideas together. He'll kind of jot some things down. We'll leave him alone for a couple of weeks, and then he'll say, all right, I have a pencil sketch. How's this look? And we're like, it's perfect. Move with it. Do the pen and ink to it. And then, we'll call it a day and move from that point. But he definitely captures every kind of imagination or idea we had in our heads visually.
And it turned out so well. So a couple more questions before we get out of here so you can get on with your evening. I always like sort of getting that little idea of how you sort of became who you are in terms of your music. So give us 3 albums that changed your life, that sort of set the path for Ben Falgoust.
Let's see. I have to say Dark Angel, Darkness Descends. There was something about it that totally fucking moved me. It was aggressive. I mean, I don't want to be a typical, Slayer. I mean, we all love Slayer. We all love the Rain and Blood record, things like that. But there was something, too, about the Dark Angel, Darkness Descends record that was reminiscent of, Rain and Blood, but more of an underground level and more of a grittier, dirtier kind of way.
Right.
And then on Napalm Death, From Enslavement to Obliteration, had a huge impact on me because I was always on a quest for bands that were fast. I mean, I like the rock and roll, I like the old metal, but I had this interest of speed. Starting from speed metal onward from there. And I remember being in a record store and I stumbled upon that record, and it was in a clear sealed plastic. And on the plastic it was written in marker, fastest band in the world, with a question mark on the back of it. And this was around, when it came out. And I was like, interesting. So I just picked it up, bought it, went home. I remember the first song coming on, and on that record, the first song was really slow, drawn out. But then after that, every song is just takeoff speed. I mean, that was grindcore. That's the gateway of grindcore right there. And it was like, holy shit, that record totally fucking moved me. And I was just like, I'll always still go back from Enslavement to Obliteration by then. I mean, Napalm Death put out numerous phenomenal records. But that record was just the one thing that caught me at first out of nowhere, and it caught me off guard completely. I mean, there was other bands like Cryptic Slaughter I was really into, and they were fairly fast-paced as well. But there was something just about Napalm Death that was just like, holy shit. And then, this is hard, I'll probably like Celtic Frost, Morbid Tales, for sure. I know that would be obvious, definitely within, you can hear the Celtic Frost influence in pretty much everything that we do.
Right.
And I remember buying it on tape as a kid, they had a store called a Record Bar when I was a kid, and they had a whole section that was metal. And when I was younger, you didn't have the internet or anything, you just kind of looked through all the tapes, and you would just randomly pick things, depending on what the picture on the cover was or something, and you took a risk, Saved some lunch money from school, and I would go there, and I would take a risk. Sometimes I pulled an awesome tape, sometimes I pulled shit, and I was like, oh, no, trash this fucking thing. I just wasted my fucking whole week's lunch money on this. But I pulled that Morbid Tales one time, and I got home and I listened to it, and it was just like, wow, this was fucking amazing, And I still think to this day that band never got recognized enough for not only those records like Morbid Tales to Megatherion, Into the Pandemonium, but the fact, too, that they influenced so many bands down on the way later on in different genres. Like, they influenced Obituary greatly. They influenced, like Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride. They influenced different variations because of the different things that they did and the different approaches that they took.
Right.
So, I think they were a huge catalyst for things within the scene. And I think they don't get a lot of credit for that as well.
All right, so last question before we get out of here, the pointless question of the week. What was your first or your favorite tattoo, and what's the story behind it?
Okay, so I waited till I was 21 to get my first tattoo. I don't know. My dad was pretty fucking, pretty harsh discipline about us when we were growing up,
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get it somewhere where he wouldn't see it. So the first one I ever got was on my back, and it was huge. It was this big round piece of like a dragon thing. It had like a head of a lion and wings, and it had these claws like of a dragon and everything. And so I picked that out. I got it out of a comic book or something. It was really small, and I blew it up. And I wanted to get it really small at first, and then the tattoo guy was like, no, we got to go big. So it's like a garbage can lid, size on my back. And I remember going in and, numerous sittings, probably like a total of like 20-something hours. And that was the first one I ever got. And I remember trying to, I always made sure I had my shirt on. And then eventually I got more tattoos, but I still got them out of the range of being seen. And I remember one evening I was at home and I was shaving and I was wiping my face with my shirt and I had got one across my stomach. And my dad walked into the bathroom and he was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, what? And I dropped my shirt really quick. And then he was like, come in the den. And he goes, take your shirt off. And then it unveiled that I had all this other stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I waited till I was 21 and I just did it and whatever. And I was really surprised because we grew up and he was really, really strict. But he was just like, well, whatever, it's your body. You're stuck with it now. That's what he basically said. When before he would have been like, I probably would have got my ass beat or something, 10 years earlier. But he was just like, it's your body. You're stuck with it, so whatever.
Nice.
But that was the first one. I just went all out with a huge circle piece in the middle of my back. And then I built around that after that.
Awesome. Ben Falgoust of Goatwhore. The new album is coming out on July 8th, Constricting Rage of the Merciless, Metal Blade Records. Catch the band on tour. That's going to be a huge tour, that Summer Slaughter tour. Thanks so much for taking the time, brother. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. Which song from the album should we play on the way out?
Ooh, let's see. Well, since we kind of covered a little bit, and it's interesting and it's different, compared to everything else that's been kind of put out there, be it internet and streaming, all we do, Nocturnal Conjuration of the Accursed.
You got it. Ben Falgoust, Goatwhore. Take it easy, and we'll see you on the road.